The Genuinely Jenny podcast is a place for conversation, curiosity, and perspective, not professional advice. It's for educational and entertainment purposes only. My opinions are my own, based on my lived experiences and ever-evolving beliefs. The views expressed by my guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect my views. I'm not a doctor, and certainly not your doctor, nor am I acting as a therapist, attorney, or financial advisor. Please use your own judgment and seek guidance from qualified professionals when making decisions about your health, relationships, finances, or other important areas of your life. Now let's get started. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Genuinely Jenny, featuring me, Jenny Elfline, your host. Today we are going to talk about pride and perfectionism and the return of Deebo Samuel. I bet you didn't think you were getting yourself into a football podcast, did you? Well, it's not. But to know me and to love me is to know that I am a 49er faithful, and also to know that I can draw life experience from pretty much any football scenario. So stick with me, okay? I have a confession to make. I don't think I genuinely, authentically apologize to anyone about anything until my mid-30s. I have always super sucked at apologizing. And it's not because I didn't make mistakes, and it's not because I didn't feel bad if I made a mistake or if I did something wrong. It is that I was raised to believe that if I made a mistake, I was a mistake. If I did something wrong, I was wrong. Making mistakes was tied into my identity and my worth. Going deep here, right? And with that, developed a sense of pride, and not like the good kind of pride to be like proud of yourself, but like a true, genuine pride where I had an inability to even recognize when I was wrong. But since then, I have learned that pride and my inability to apologize weren't really a character flaw so much as a way of protecting myself. So let's get into the Deebo of it all. You may be sitting here thinking, what does Deebo Samuel have to do with this? You may be sitting there thinking, who the heck is Deebo Samuel? Well, I'm about to tell you. Deebo Samuel is a NFL player. He has played for the 49ers for most of his career, and he's one of those, like, they call him a once in a generation kind of player. He kind of like does it all. He's just like known for a lot of things. He's also known for really having a chip on his shoulder. He's got definitely like an attitude and a swagger, and he's definitely not one of those guys that's going to get up to the microphone after a loss and be like, there are many things I could have done wrong. He's just, I don't know that I'd be friends with Deebo Samuel, but I definitely liked him as a player. So a few years ago, I'm part of the team if you didn't know, we were coming off of a terrible Super Bowl loss. And the following year was terrible, like riddled with injuries. I imagine that people were very unhappy in that locker room. There was a lot of frustration, and there was a main point of the frustration, I imagine, was their kicker. And there was this one game where the kicker missed a kick that he probably should have made. And after the play, Deebo sort of caused a ruckus. He went over and he was talking all kinds of crap to him, and it started this like mess over on the sideline where people were shoving, and Deebo looked at the kicker and he told him he needed to lock in. And it was all over the media, all over the sports media, all over my social media. And it kind of seemed just kind of typical of Deebo, but you could also just tell that people were very frustrated on that team. Well, a week or two later, they had an opportunity to win a game, and a pass went to Deebo, and it just slipped right through his hands. Like, it was a terrible drop. He should have caught it. It would have been a touchdown, could have been a game changer, and he just dropped it. Now, imagine the week before, you had just been giving this guy such a hard time about not doing his job correctly, and now he just did this, basically the same thing, maybe even worse. But after that, you could just see in his face. Now, of course, I'm speculating here, but I watch a lot of coverage and I watch a lot of player interviews. And so I feel like I get to know some of their personality through that. But you could really see that Deebo was humiliated. And I don't think it was just humiliated about the play. I think that he was tearing himself up over the fact that he had done what he had done the week before. And of course, the media and social media were tearing him apart. Oh, you better lock in, Deebo. And shortly after that, the season ended and he actually requested a trade. And at that time, I just remember thinking, like, why is he running from this? He created this situation, right? Why is he running from it? But then it dawned on me, I actually could very much relate to exactly why he was running from it. Now, imagine if in that day that he missed the catch, if he would have gone up to the podium or talked to the reporters and been like, wow, I'm an idiot, right? I just totally dropped that ball after talking so much shit to that other guy. That's so stupid of me. Or even be like, I feel terrible that I did that last week. This is my karma coming back for me that this happened to me today. And had he done that, nobody would have said anything else to him after that. Maybe idiots on social media would have, but for the most part, it would have just been dropped. But for him to be able to say, I made a mistake, 2 mistakes, and I feel bad about it, was probably like an insurmountable feat. He probably felt like he would rather do anything than apologize and acknowledge that he made a mistake. And to him, do anything was switch teams. Switch teams for a year, and now he's back, and all is right in the world, and that kicker is gone, so we're all happy about it. But I just imagine that he never really wanted to leave the team, but he was so dug in on not expressing that he made a mistake, not acknowledging that he was wrong, that he was willing to change teams to avoid it all. Again, I don't know if that is true, but that's what it felt like to me. And I think that's just because I could very much relate to that feeling, that I would do anything rather than admit that I was wrong. As I was growing up, mistakes were not allowed to be made by me. I mean, it's not like we had like a sign hanging on the wall that said Jen's not allowed to make mistakes, but if I made a mistake, it was a huge deal. Everybody talked about it. Everybody talked about how I didn't usually make mistakes, and so it was so weird that I made a mistake, and I would just be like reminded of my mistake over and over for my entire life. This is a terrible story that I'm going to share with you guys, but I have no shame in it anymore. So when I was really little, I have a sister that is about 3 years younger than me. And I think I was probably like 4 or 5. And we used to eat dinner in the kitchen or in the dining room. And I had one of those little like yellow and orange plastic picnic table things. And she was sitting in a high chair. And she used to throw her food on the floor. And she would get in trouble for it. And for some reason, I got some sort of joy out of the fact that she would get in trouble for it. And that's probably a subject for a whole other podcast. But I thought it would be funny to continue to throw food on the floor and pretend like it was her so that she would get in trouble. I know, this is like so terrible. And I do feel really bad about it now. But somehow or another, I got caught. And of course I got in trouble. I deserved to be in trouble. I remember crying about it. I remember feeling so bad. Like I still feel so bad about it. But what I remember more than that is that for the rest of my life, that was thrown into my face. The mistake that I had made, the fact that I did something so wrong, I was reminded of it over and over and over for my entire life. And it wasn't just that. It was every mistake I ever made. Even like an error or said something stupid or just like did something that was silly. I was reminded of it over and over and over. And what that did was it led me to a place where I wasn't able to make mistakes or to be wrong unless I wanted to have it thrown back in my face all the time. And it left me feeling like emotionally unsafe. Because if you're not free to make a mistake, if you don't feel like you're safe in a safe place where you can make mistakes, you just can't make mistakes anymore. And let me tell you, that is a very, very heavy burden to carry. The inability to make mistakes, the feeling that you don't have the same worth in this world if you make mistakes. That all the good things about you may be true, but one mistake is what everyone is going to continue to remember. That's very heavy. So I just did my best to not ever make mistakes. And if I did make a mistake or if I was wrong about something, I would try to cover it up or to make sure that nobody found out. I would deny that it existed. I would do anything to avoid acknowledging that I had done something wrong. And I would still have guilt over things. Like, I wasn't perfect. If I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes and I would still carry guilt over it. But when you have guilt over something that you've done or mistake that you've made, that just is like your emotion telling you like that you need to fix it. But on top of the guilt, I had shame because every mistake I made was a mistake that I was. If I did something wrong, I was wrong. If I did something bad, I was bad. So there was shame in making mistakes. And when you're carrying shame, you hide and you're defensive and you deny. And there's research that shows that kids who grow up with a lot of shame become adults who have an inability to admit mistakes. And it's not like I would just not admit mistakes to other people. I didn't even want to admit that I was wrong to myself. And once you become unable to see that you are making mistakes yourself, that's when things kind of shift. That's when things go from just having a fear of being wrong to an absolute desire for perfection. And perfection inevitably becomes pride. Pride doesn't always just come from ego. Pride can also be that you're so insistent on doing everything perfectly that the opposite of that, or anytime you fall off of that, it's such a hit to your pride because it's a hit to who you are as a person. And I carried that on into my adulthood. I was a perfectionist. I was prideful. Everything I did, I had to do it perfectly. And I don't think there was really a time when people actually told me, like, you have to do things perfectly. But that was just what I had learned. If you don't do it perfectly, then you're not right. You're not worthy. And that leaves you with no room for fallibility. And that is very, very heavy. When my husband and I got married, in our wedding vows, he said, "You're always right, even when you're wrong." And I remember at that time feeling a little bit like, he's calling me out. He knows that? Like, what? This whole time, he knew that I was wrong about the things that I was insisting I was right about, and he just let me go with it. I've been seen. No one else has ever seen me before, and he still loves me. Like, what is happening? This is crazy. But at the same time, I didn't really change. I was like, that's right. I am always right. Wrong or right, I am always right. And we joke about it now because I do tend to be right about things, but it's not because I know everything or I am perfect. It's because my brain still has this filter that says, if you don't know that your answer is absolutely correct, don't say it. If there's any question that you could be wrong about what you're about to say, don't say it. So it ends up that I only say things if I know for a fact that it's true. So all the way into my adulthood, my pride and my perfectionism were hand in hand, because really perfectionism is just a disguise for all of that pride. Thoughts go through my head like, if I'm wrong, then that means I'm stupid. If I'm wrong, then I'm a terrible wife. If I'm wrong, then I'm a terrible realtor. It all was tied into my identity. It wasn't tied into whatever I was doing. It was just my identity. Brene Brown actually said something once about that perfectionism is an armor, that it's not like people who are trying to be perfect are doing so because they want to be more. It's because we're afraid of the shame of being less. We're not striving to be better than everybody. We're just striving to make sure that no one can ever see that other side of us that isn't worthy. So now if you imagine that perfection is a way of protecting ourselves, then an apology is opening yourself up to everything you're trying to protect yourself against. An apology feels like you're letting your armor down. And that's why for people like me, people like Deebo, surely millions of people out there who have taught that they have to be perfect or bust, it feels like an apology is an impossible thing. Like at that time, at the time of my wedding, if I made a mistake, I would just need my husband to know that I knew I made a mistake and not actually hold me to saying I'm sorry or I'm wrong. And thankfully, he knew me probably better than I knew myself, because he would never push that in my face or anything. But there were definitely times when he knew I was wrong, but he wouldn't make me say it because it literally felt like impossible words to get out. I'm wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Because that's just opening the door for rejection. Because previously in my life, when I made a mistake, I was rejected for the person that I was. And there's research that says that the brain interprets social rejection as physical pain. And I can completely relate to that. That's how bad it was. It would physically hurt me to admit that I was wrong. My family would always say, she's so stubborn. She's so stubborn. And so that was another identity that I took on. Oh, I'm just stubborn. But it wasn't like it was a choice that I was making. Well, I guess it was a choice. It was a choice I was making to dig my heels in and insist that I was right, because the opposite couldn't be true, because it was too painful. That would cause me physical pain to be wrong. If you think about it, apologizing is like you're voluntarily taking that on. You have questions like, what if these people reject me? Or what if they throw it back in my face? What if they never forgive me? What if they never let me forget that I made that mistake? So we avoid it, but it doesn't mean that if we avoid the apology, it goes away. We still carry the guilt. We still carry the weight of maintaining that perfect persona. And, the silly thing is, like I said, my husband, he would know when I was wrong. Probably my family knew when I was wrong about things. It's not like people only know that you make a mistake if you apologize. Other people know. And the tricky thing is, when you don't acknowledge it, you give all the power to the other person. If you're in some sort of a conflict with another person and you've made a mistake or you're wrong and you don't claim it, that gives the other person the opportunity to weaponize your mistakes against you. And I speak out of experience, but I don't think I'm the only one. We definitely live in a society where if you make a mistake, you are going to be held to it forever. It's going to become this huge deal on social media, through the regular media. You can't make mistakes. Other people will use your mistakes against you. Think about politics, for crying out loud. Like, how often do politicians come out and say, I was wrong about that thing I said, and I'm sorry that I said it that way, and this is what I meant. The only time they ever apologize for anything is when they've been caught with their pants down, probably literally and figuratively, and they have like a PR statement that includes an apology. That's the only time we ever hear politicians admitting that they're wrong about things. But it's not necessarily their fault, because if they were to acknowledge that they're wrong, or if they were to change their minds about something, their opponents or the people on the other side of the fence are going to call them hypocrites and flip-floppers. It's in our nature to constantly be managing our social image, and especially for those people that are in the spotlight, they have to maintain that armor has to be there all the time. Finally, at some point, I think it was even before I started therapy, I feel like it was sometime during my real estate career, I was so hard on myself trying to be perfect all the time, and there's so many moving pieces in real estate that inevitably some little thing is going to happen, right? Someone forgets to send a document or whatever. And finally, that weight of being perfect became too much for me to bear. And for some reason, I flipped and I went completely the other way. I kind of realized that if you take accountability for what you've done and you admit that you've made a mistake, it's actually harder for the other side to use it against you. When you say, I was wrong, you take away any guilt that you have. You take away any secrecy that you have if you were trying to like fix things and take care of them on your own. It takes away the defensiveness, but it also takes away their leverage to use your mistakes against you. And sometimes when I think about this, it feels like it's manipulative. Like if I'm in a situation with a disagreement or I'm in some sort of conflict, conflicts can be small or large, but if I'm in a conflict, I immediately go through and I'm like, what are all the things that I did wrong in this? I'm going to name them all right now and get them out of the way. That way they can't use it against me. When do I think they're going to use it against me? I have no idea, but maybe they would. But people can't expose things that you've done if you've already exposed them. And then that leads to being able to offer a healthy apology and ideally to close that loop of the conflict. When I became a mom, I knew that I wanted my kids to grow up feeling emotionally safe. I feel like there are things like everybody wants their kids to have a better life than they did, right? But there were some things, like I have this little list in my mind of things that I was like, I'm definitely going to make sure that these things are true. And one of them is I wanted my kids to never have to know the feeling of being a perfectionist or of being required to be a perfectionist. I wanted them to know that it's okay to make a mistake. I wanted them to know that the best thing they can do when they make a mistake is to own it and apologize and learn from it and move on. And I wanted them to learn all of this in the safety of our home. And I think things like this are actually, it's like a practice thing that you have to kind of like practice some of the behaviors that you grow up learning. That way, when you get into the real world, you already know what you're doing. So it was really important for me to know that they felt okay to make a mistake, that they could acknowledge their mistake, and for them to know I'm going to love them regardless. The best way for me to show them that or to give them that permission to be imperfect was to show them the example of it. And so something that this was very different from how I grew up is I apologize to my kids when I've done something wrong to them. If I've spoken disrespectfully to them, or I've raised my voice at a time that it wasn't necessary or went too far with it, I'm going to apologize to them and I'm going to let them know I made a mistake and I'm going to fix it and move on with it. One time, my youngest, Ellie, she kind of got me in check with that. I don't remember exactly what had happened, but I think something was happening with my kids. They were driving me crazy. It was late into the evening, and I don't remember what exactly, but I must have like gone off on them about something, like not physically or anything, but like I think I maybe like yelled at them, or maybe whatever punishment I gave for whatever they had done maybe was a little extreme. And so Ellie came into my room, and whatever it was, I must have been harder on my oldest. So, but Ellie came into my room and she was like, "Mommy," yes, my kids still call me mommy and I love it. "Mommy, I think that you were too hard on Soph and I think that you need to apologize to her." And I very easily could have been like, "Look, she was doing this and this. She knows she's not supposed to do those things. And so this is the consequence of her action." But I thought about it and I was like, I probably did yell more than I needed to. And this is just a good opportunity for me to go and, with my tail between my legs and apologize to her. So I went into her room and I apologized. And I've done that dozens of times. Anytime I feel, like sometimes I'm overstimulated or my hormones are wacky or I'm tired or whatever the excuse is, I lose my shit and I yell at my kids and I end up yelling weird things that I'm sure I'll share with you guys, some of those weird things. But when I lose it, I make sure that later I do go and I apologize to them. That way they know that they can also apologize to me and my husband too. Like I try to not like embarrass him in front of the kids, but if I notice that he's saying something that is maybe disrespectful to them or is not acknowledging their feelings or something like that, I'll tell him afterwards, like, "I think you were wrong to say that way." And he'll go also and just apologize for it. And it's not like it's any big deal. That's the thing about it. We've made it so that it's not a big deal to offer the apology. Therefore, they can accept the apology. When they were really little, we would always say, like, it's okay to make a mistake. We wanted them to be truthful with us and tell us when they had done something wrong, whatever like something wrong means when you're really little. But Soph She used to say, it's okay to make a steak. And so we kind of say that still in our house. Like, don't forget, it's okay to make a steak. And it makes us all laugh, but it is true. It's okay to make a mistake. By knowing that it's okay to make a steak, they are able to put their guard down. They don't have to protect themselves with that perfectionism. They don't have to have so much pride wrapped around being right all the time. Children who feel emotionally secure are more likely to take accountability for the mistakes that they make because they don't feel like the relationship is in jeopardy with that mistake. So like I said, we've kind of made it just a normal everyday thing where our kids feel free to apologize. But the other side of that coin is that we're teaching them that it's okay to accept someone else's apology. And I think that is where we really have gone wrong. How can anyone who's already dealing with these issues of feeling like you have to be perfect all the time, being so weary of making mistakes, how can they possibly feel comfortable apologizing or taking accountability if the other side of that truly is a side of punishing and reminding them of their errors forever and really weaponizing the vulnerability of the apology? What would it look like if instead we accepted other people's accountability and we gave them grace for the fact that all humans make mistakes? I think that the strongest relationships don't get there because there's absolutely nothing wrong in the relationship, that it's always smooth sailing. I think the strongest relationships are those that are tested and both parties are willing and able to extend accountability and willing and able to accept that accountability from the other side with grace, letting the other person know that it's okay to be wrong. You can be wrong about things. We can discuss forgiveness. We can find a way forward, and I'm still going to love you no matter what. Or if it's outside of your family and friends, if it's your coworkers or just in society, to extend the grace to make a mistake and to be able to say, I trust that you're going to learn from this and we're both going to move on and have a stronger relationship for it. As a recovering, prideful, non-apologizer, the biggest thing that I have realized is that having humility doesn't mean that you have to humiliate yourself. That's what it felt like to me before. Having humility meant that I was going to be humiliated and I was going to be pummeled to the ground, but that's really not true. Having humility and accountability truly ends up being just freedom. That weight that I talked about that just is like on your back and like follows you through everything. When you feel like you have to be perfect with every single thing, it just lifts. You have freedom. You have freedom from pretending. You have freedom from trying to be perfect. You have freedom from your guilt and your shame. You have freedom from trying to defend this image of yourself that you've created. I tell my kids all the time that in all situations, the best thing they can do is tell me the truth. And it doesn't mean that they won't have repercussions. It doesn't mean there won't be discipline. It doesn't even mean that I won't be disappointed in the choice that they made. But it also doesn't mean that I'm going to stop loving them. I just really want them to know that there's nothing they can do that's going to make me stop loving them. And also that whatever the situation they've got themselves into, we can figure it out together. I can help you learn from it. I think that's also what adults need to hear to be able to freely take accountability, that your apology will be accepted and that you're not going to lose the love or the respect or the support of the people around you. I watch a lot of reality TV, and the thing that drives me the most crazy of all is people who won't take accountability or who won't admit mistakes. There are a few specific people that they've blown up entire relationships because they just will not admit to their mistake. And I understand it. I can feel it. I can feel the weight of digging in. I've made my decision. I am standing on this and I am not going to budge. It's so hard. It sucks. It's a terrible feeling. And the people around them probably don't even care about the mistake that they made. But if those people knew from their friends, it's okay if you did this thing, if you said this thing, if you made this mistake, we might be kind of mad at you, but we're still going to love you. How would that change everything? And I think that maybe that's why we fight so hard to protect our pride, to to use our perfectionism to protect ourselves because we don't believe that that is true. Somewhere along the line, so many of us learned that if you make a mistake, you're putting your relationships in jeopardy because your value in this world is not the same. And I just imagine Deebo Samuel, he probably was so good from the time he was little. He probably had this image in his mind that I have to be this perfect person. I have to be a perfect player. Maybe not a perfect person, but he had to be a perfect player all the way through elementary school, middle school, high school, college. And then once he got to the NFL, he had this standard that he set and he had to protect it at all times, because he probably felt like if I'm anything less than perfect, people won't love me the same way. What if we became the kind of people who made it safe for other people to say, I was wrong? Imagine how our relationships could change. Marriages, friendships, families, workplace, or just in society. If all of us felt like we had the ability to express our accountability, express our apology, and know that on the other side, it's going to be received with grace and understanding and love. Probably make things a lot better. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.